Why is it that after discovering your husband's betrayal, life suddenly feels heavy and every step forward seems impossible? You wake up, but the energy is gone. Things you once loved now feel meaningless. It's as if the act of cheating didn't just break trust, it drained the very motivation that kept your soul alive. Carl Jung would say, this isn't just about what he did, but about what it awakens inside of you. Betrayal cracks open hidden wounds, shakes the foundation of your self-worth, and makes you question the story you thought you were living. The unconscious begins to whisper doubts. Was I ever enough? Can I trust again? Why should I even try? This video will take you deeper into the psychology behind that emptiness. You will see why infidelity strikes at your core, why your energy collapses, and how you can reclaim the strength that was never truly lost, only buried under pain. The shock that breaks your inner world. When a woman discovers that her husband has cheated, the first blow is not only to the marriage, it is to the very ground beneath her feet. In one instant, everything that felt safe and stable is shaken. The home that once carried laughter now feels like a stage for lies. The man who promised loyalty now represents betrayal. And more than all of this, her own inner world feels broken. The shock is not simply about what happened. It is about how reality suddenly no longer matches the story she believed in. Carl Jung often spoke about the moment when the unconscious collides with the conscious mind. Betrayal works in exactly that way. A woman builds her life on trust, on patterns, on certainty. When infidelity surfaces, it is as if the unconscious bursts open, flooding her with truths she never wanted to see. Suddenly she realizes, I did not know everything. I was blind to what was happening. That realization shatters more than the relationship. It shatters her confidence in her own perception. The shock runs deep because it touches both the heart and the psyche. On one side is the emotional wound, the grief of being deceived by the person closest to her. On the other side is the psychological wound, the painful awareness that the story of her life is not what she thought. This dual impact explains why motivation collapses. When the inner world is fractured, the energy that used to drive daily life is swallowed by confusion. Jung would describe this as the encounter with the shadow. The shadow is the hidden part of reality we avoid, the side of life that carries lies, fear, and pain. In a marriage, the shadow may be ignored for years, covered with routines and appearances. But when cheating is revealed, the shadow crashes into the open. The woman sees not only her husband's hidden side, but also her own hidden fears. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, fear of wasting her life. These shadows rise all at once, overwhelming her. That is why the first stage after betrayal feels like paralysis. The body may function, but the spirit feels frozen. The shock steals breath, steals appetite, steals joy. It is not laziness, it is trauma. The nervous system is trying to process a reality that feels unreal. Motivation disappears because the mind is busy trying to reassemble a shattered identity. This shock also explains why women often ask themselves endless questions in the beginning. How could he do this? Why didn't I see it? Was our whole life a lie? These questions are not weakness. They are the natural attempt of the psyche to put the pieces back together. But while these questions swirl, the energy to move forward is blocked. Everything is focused on survival. Jung believed that within every collapse lies the seed of transformation. The shock that breaks the inner world is painful, but it also exposes what was hidden. It forces the woman to see not only the betrayal, but also the illusions she carried. Illusions of control, illusions of certainty, illusions of perfect safety. These illusions must break for truth to emerge. And though the truth hurts, it is the first step toward freedom. The shock is devastating, yes. It breaks trust, it breaks confidence, it breaks the story of the marriage. But within that breaking a deeper strength waits. At first, the woman only feels emptiness, yet slowly, from the ruins of what she believed, she can begin to build again, this time not on illusion, but on awareness. The inner world shatters in silence and motivation disappears. But Jung reminds us, even when the surface is broken, the deeper self remains. The woman may feel lost, but her essence is still whole, and in time she will discover that the shock, as cruel as it is, has opened the path to a more authentic life. Why trust feels impossible to rebuild. After betrayal, trust becomes the most fragile and painful word in a woman's vocabulary. Once it is broken, every glance, every silence, every promise feels suspicious. Even if her husband swears it will never happen again, even if he tries to prove his loyalty, her heart resists. It is not simply about forgiving an act, it is about rebuilding an entire foundation. And rebuilding feels impossible when the ground itself has collapsed. Carl Jung would say that betrayal tears the veil of illusion. Before, the woman believed she knew who she was with. She believed in his character, his words, his loyalty. The marriage stood as a fortress. But when cheating is revealed, she realizes that the fortress had cracks all along. Cracks she never saw or refused to see. This revelation destroys not only her trust in him, but also her trust in herself. She asks, if I was wrong about him, what else am I wrong about? Can I ever trust my own judgment again? This double blow is what makes rebuilding so difficult. Trust is not only an agreement between two people, it is a psychological structure. It lives deep in the unconscious as the safe ground on which life is built. When betrayal strikes, the unconscious shakes violently. The woman no longer feels safe even in her own thoughts. That is why she replays conversations, checks for hidden signs, questions his every move. It is the mind's way of searching for lost security. Motivation disappears here because trust is energy. When you believe in someone, you walk lighter, you plan, you dream. But when trust collapses, that energy is stolen. The mind becomes busy guarding against further betrayal. It is exhausting to live always on alert, and that exhaustion leaves no strength for joy, creativity, or even basic motivation. Jung described this state as being trapped in the tension of opposites. One part of the woman wants to believe again because belief brings comfort. Another part refuses to believe because belief brought pain. She swings between hope and suspicion, love and anger, forgiveness and rejection. This swinging consumes her spirit, leaving her drained. Rebuilding trust seems impossible because the psyche is stuck in this endless war. Many women try to force themselves to trust again quickly. They say, if I don't move on, I'll never heal. But forced trust is fragile. It breaks at the smallest disappointment. Real trust cannot be demanded or rushed. It must grow again from truth, and truth is often slow. Jung would say that rushing only deepens the shadow because it hides the real pain beneath false smiles. The deeper reason trust feels impossible to rebuild is that betrayal awakens ancient wounds. It touches childhood fears of abandonment, primal fears of being unworthy. The husband's cheating is not just a single event, it is the trigger that opens all those old doors. To trust again would mean healing not only the present wound, but also the echoes of past wounds. That is why the task feels so heavy. Yet Jung also believed that in facing these wounds lies transformation. Trust may never return in its old form, but a new kind of trust can be born, one that is wiser, less blind, more rooted in awareness. The woman may never again see her husband as flawless, but she can learn to see people as they are, not as illusions. And perhaps most importantly, she can learn to trust herself again, her instincts, her worth, her choices. Trust after betrayal feels impossible because the old structure is gone. But impossibility is not the end. It is the beginning of something different. The woman who walks through this darkness slowly builds a trust, not based on naivety, but on truth. And that trust, though scarred, can become stronger than what was lost. If this message resonates, explore the Jung Method, a quiet path to understanding your patterns, energy, and truth. The link is pinned in the first comment. The silent weight that steals your energy. After betrayal, many women describe a heaviness that follows them everywhere. It is not just sadness, and it is not only anger. It feels like a silent weight pressing on the chest, slowing every thought, every movement, every dream. This weight is invisible to others, but it consumes her from within. Suddenly, the smallest tasks feel overwhelming. The joy she once carried in daily life fades. What remains is exhaustion. Carl Jung would say that this weight is the unconscious, demanding attention. When trauma is not processed, it does not disappear, it sinks deeper. But sinking does not mean silence. Instead, the unspoken pain drains energy. The woman's body and mind carry the constant burden of what has not been healed. This is why betrayal doesn't just hurt emotionally, it steals vitality itself. The silent weight shows up in many ways. Sleep becomes restless, yet waking feels just as tiring. Things that once brought pleasure now feel empty. The woman looks in the mirror and sees not only herself, but also the shadow of what she lost. Even when she tries to distract herself, the heaviness follows. Motivation dies not because she is weak, but because the energy is locked in battle with invisible wounds. Betrayal demands constant mental processing. How did this happen? What did I miss? Could I have stopped it? These questions loop endlessly, and each loop consumes strength. The brain works overtime, trying to rewrite the story and find meaning, but this constant thinking becomes a thief of energy. Instead of moving forward, the woman circles the same questions, drained by repetition. Jung described this as psychic energy being trapped in the complex. A complex is a cluster of emotions and thoughts tied to a painful experience. When the cheating becomes the central complex, the woman's energy keeps flowing back into it. Every attempt to move forward is pulled back by the gravity of that wound. This explains why even years later, women can feel sudden waves of heaviness. The complex is still active, still pulling on their soul. The silent weight also comes from carrying shame that does not belong to her. Even though it was her husband who cheated, she feels the invisible question, was I not enough? That hidden shame wraps around her spirit, stealing confidence and joy. Jung would remind us that this shame is a projection. It belongs to the betrayer, not the betrayed. But until she recognizes this truth, she carries a burden that is not hers to carry. Another reason for this weight is that betrayal destabilizes the nervous system. The body goes into survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze. For many women, the result is a constant freeze. The body is present, but the soul feels stuck. Energy that should flow into living is locked into simply enduring. This physical exhaustion adds to the emotional heaviness, creating a cycle that is hard to break. The tragedy is that others may not see it. Friends might say, "You should move." And by now, family may not understand why she is still tired, still quiet, still heavy. But the silent weight is real. It is not laziness, not weakness, not stubbornness. It is the body and soul carrying the shadow of betrayal, step by step, day by day. Yet within this weight lies a message. Jung would say the unconscious uses suffering as a signal. The heaviness means something must be faced, not ignored. It is a call to healing, to honesty, to self-care. Though it feels like a prison, it can also be the doorway to transformation. If she listens, the silent weight steals energy, yes. It makes life smaller and darker, but it also reveals how deeply the soul longs for truth. And when the woman begins to honor that longing, the weight can slowly lift, Not all at once, but piece by piece, as she releases what was never hers to carry and learns to live again from her own center. How betrayal shakes a woman's self-worth. When a husband cheats, the wound goes far beyond the act itself. The deepest cut lands on a woman's sense of worth. Even if she knows, logically, that his infidelity reflects his own shadows and choices, the heart asks dangerous questions. Was I not enough? Did I fail as a partner? Am I less valuable than the woman he chose? These questions sting because betrayal does not only break trust, it attacks identity. Carl Jung would explain this through projection. A woman often projects her own sense of value into the marriage. She believes her role as wife, partner, and anchor proves her worth. When betrayal enters, that projection collapses. The marriage no longer validates her. Instead, it seems to accuse her, even if she is innocent. This collapse shakes her self-image at the core. Betrayal also activates the archetypal wound of the feminine, the ancient fear of being abandoned, replaced, or unseen. For centuries, women's value was measured by loyalty, beauty, or the ability to keep a man's attention. Though society has changed, these old patterns still live in the collective unconscious. When a woman is betrayed, these echoes awaken. She feels the weight, not only of her personal pain, but of countless generations of women before her. This explains why the blow to self-worth feels so overwhelming. It is not just about one husband and one affair. It is about an inner narrative. If he cheated, it must mean I am not enough. This belief is toxic, but it is powerful. It can steal motivation, silence joy, and even convince her that future love is impossible. In truth, his betrayal says more about his emptiness than about her worth. Jung would remind us, what we do in secret often reflects our shadow. The parts of ourselves we cannot face. A cheating husband is often running from his own fears, fear of aging, fear of insignificance, fear of confronting himself. But when she is the one left with the wound, it is easy to confuse his shadow with her identity. Self-worth is also shaken because betrayal isolates. Friends and family may not fully understand. Some may even blame the woman. Maybe you should have done more. These cruel voices echo her own doubts, making her feel smaller. Instead of receiving comfort, she feels judged. The result is deeper silence, deeper shame. Motivation fades because the world seems to confirm her worst fear, that she has lost her value. But Jung believed that crises of identity can also open the door to individuation, the process of becoming whole. When self-worth tied to another collapses, the woman has a painful but powerful opportunity to rediscover worth within herself. She can begin to see that she is valuable not because of a man's fidelity, but because of her own being. Her wisdom, her kindness, her strength, her story, these are treasures no betrayal can erase. The path is not easy. In the beginning, she may cling to comparisons, measuring herself against the other woman. She may punish herself with endless what-ifs, but slowly, if she dares to look inward, she will find that betrayal has stripped away illusions. What remains is raw truth. She is still here, still breathing, still carrying dignity. Motivation returns when self-worth is reclaimed. It begins with small steps, setting boundaries, honoring her needs, refusing to let lies define her. Each step is a quiet rebellion against the shadow of betrayal. Each act of self-love is proof that her value was never lost, only hidden under the rubble of his choices. Betrayal shakes a woman's self-worth, yes, but it cannot destroy it. Jung reminds us, the self, the deeper essence within every human, is untouchable. A cheating husband may bruise the surface, but he cannot erase the soul. And when a woman rises from betrayal with renewed self-worth, she carries a power no shadow can take away. The unseen wounds of the female soul. Not every wound bleeds in the open. Some remain hidden, silent, and invisible, even to the one who carries them. After betrayal, these unseen wounds cut the deepest. They are not the tears cried in the night, nor the arguments replayed in the mind. They are the quiet fractures of the soul, the parts of a woman that begin to doubt her place in the world, her ability to be loved, and the meaning of her journey. Carl Jung spoke often about the unconscious and the hidden patterns it holds. Betrayal does not simply leave scars on the surface, it awakens wounds buried deep in the unconscious. A woman may find herself remembering old fears, the first time she felt abandoned as a child, the first rejection, the first moment she wondered if she was enough. The affair becomes a trigger that pulls all these buried experiences back into the light. The pain feels multiplied because it is not only about now, it is about then and everything in between. These unseen wounds also appear in how she views herself. She may feel guilty without reason, blaming herself for his actions. She may carry shame, convinced that others secretly judge her. She may hide her story, pretending everything is fine because exposing it feels too heavy. On the outside, she may look strong, but inside the soul whispers, "You are broken." Jung would describe this as the shadow of betrayal merging with the woman's own shadow. The shadow holds all the parts of ourselves we reject or fear. Betrayal forces these parts to the surface. Feelings of unworthiness, of envy, of despair, all come rushing up. The unseen wounds are not just scars from his actions, they are also the fragments of her own inner battles. These wounds can affect every area of life. She may withdraw from friendships, afraid of being pitied or judged. She may lose interest in work or creativity, her energy stolen by silent sorrow. Even her body may feel the weight, fatigue, tension, unexplained aches. The soul speaks through the body, and when the soul is wounded, the body often carries the echo. Yet because these wounds are invisible, they are often dismissed. Others may tell her it's time to move on. But how does one move on when the pain is not only external, but deeply internal? The unseen wounds cannot be ignored. They must be acknowledged, faced, and healed with patience. Jung believed that healing comes through consciousness, bringing what is hidden into the light. This means naming the pain, admitting the shame, and refusing to bury it again. The danger of ignoring these wounds is that they quietly shape the future. A woman may enter new relationships carrying mistrust, expecting betrayal before it even happens. She may sabotage happiness, convinced it cannot last. Without healing, the unseen wounds keep writing the story over and over. But here lies the path to transformation. When a woman chooses to face the unseen wounds, she begins the journey of individuation, the process Jung described as becoming whole. She learns that her worth was never destroyed, only covered by pain. She learns to separate his betrayal from her identity. She learns that even brokenness can hold beauty, for it reveals depth and resilience. The unseen wounds of the female soul are real. They are not weakness, not imagination, not exaggeration. They are the hidden proof of how deeply a woman feels, how strongly she loves, and how much she carries. And when she begins to heal them, she does more than recover. She awakens. From the unseen wounds emerges a new self, wiser, stronger, and ready to live not in shadows, but in truth. Why your mind replays the pain again and again. After betrayal, many women feel trapped inside a cycle of endless thoughts. The scene of discovery replays like a broken record. The same questions circle day and night. How did this happen? Was I blind? What did I miss? Could I have prevented it? Even when she wants to move forward, her mind drags her back to the pain. It feels as if the betrayal is happening again and again. Carl Jung would explain this through the power of complexes. A complex is an emotional knot, a cluster of memories, feelings and thoughts tied to a single wound. Once activated, a complex has its own energy. It repeats, interrupts, and dominates attention. Infidelity becomes such a complex. Every detail, every word, every suspicion gathers into one powerful knot that refuses to loosen. This is why the woman cannot simply forget. The psyche will not let her until it understands. The repetition serves a hidden purpose. The mind is trying to make sense of the senseless. Betrayal feels illogical, so the psyche circles it, hoping that another replay will reveal the missing answer. But each replay only deepens the wound, carving the pain deeper into memory. This cycle drains motivation. Energy that could be used for healing is instead consumed by endless analysis. This is not weakness. It is the unconscious seeking resolution. The problem is that betrayal rarely has answers that satisfy. Why he cheated, what he was thinking, whether he regrets it, these explanations cannot erase the act. Still, the mind replays because it believes that understanding will heal. Jung would say that true healing does not come from intellectual answers, but from integrating the shadow. Only when the woman accepts that betrayal has happened, without illusion, without denial, can the cycle begin to slow. Another reason the mind replays pain is survival. The brain is wired to remember threats. Betrayal feels like danger, so the psyche stores every detail as a warning. Never let this happen again. The problem is that this survival mechanism works too well. It keeps the wound fresh, forcing the woman to relive it daily, as if reliving it could provide protection. In reality, it only prolongs suffering. This replay also reflects the split inside her. One part of her still longs for what was real, the good memories, the love they once shared. Another part is filled with rage and grief. The mind replays both sides, swinging between nostalgia and anger, hope and despair. This inner conflict is exhausting. It robs her of peace and keeps her locked in the past. Jung believed that the way out of repetition is not to fight it, but to listen to it. The replays are messages from the unconscious. They ask, what part of me needs healing? What truth must I face? What illusion must I release? When she dares to ask these questions, the replays slowly lose their grip. The mind no longer needs to circle endlessly because the deeper lesson is being integrated. The cycle may last weeks, months, even years, but it is not eternal. Every time she acknowledges the pain, every time she allows herself to feel it fully, the knot loosens a little. Eventually, the memory stops being a prison and becomes part of her story. Painful, yes, but no longer ruling her life. Why does the mind replay the pain again and again? Because betrayal is not just an event, it is a rupture in the soul. The replays are the psyche's attempt to stitch the wound. They feel like torture, but they are also a sign of the soul's desire to heal. And when the woman finally learns to trust herself again, the cycle fades. She no longer replays the pain, she reclaims her power. The hidden shadow behind his infidelity. When a husband cheats, the first instinct is to see it only as a choice, selfish, cruel, and deliberate. And while this is true on the surface, Jung would invite us to look deeper. Beneath the action lies the shadow, the hidden part of the man's psyche that he does not acknowledge, cannot accept, or refuses to face. Infidelity, in many cases, is not simply about desire. It is about a man running from his own darkness. Carl Jung described the shadow as the collection of rejected qualities we push out of consciousness. For a man, this shadow often holds insecurity, fear of aging, unresolved wounds, and unmet needs. Rather than confronting them, he projects them outward. Cheating becomes a way to escape the mirror of his own inadequacy. By seeking another woman, he seeks proof that he is still desirable, still powerful, still alive. In truth, he is not chasing her. He is chasing the pieces of himself he cannot find within. This hidden shadow explains why betrayal often feels so senseless to the woman. She asks, "Why risk everything for something so shallow?" The answer lies in the unconscious. Infidelity is rarely rational. It is a symptom of a deeper fracture in his psyche. Instead of working through it, he acts it out. The affair becomes his shadow's playground, but the tragedy is that while he tries to escape his darkness, he casts it onto her. The woman becomes the one carrying the consequences of his shadow. She feels the shame, the pain, the loss of trust. She suffers because he could not face himself. Jung would say that this is projection at its most destructive. He projects his emptiness, and she absorbs the wound. The hidden shadow also explains why many men continue to cheat even after being caught. The surface man may promise change, but the shadow remains unintegrated. Unless he confronts the fears and desires that drive him, the cycle repeats. This does not excuse the betrayal, but it reveals the depth of the problem. Without shadow work, infidelity is not just an action. It is a pattern. For the woman, understanding this shadow is painful but powerful. It shows that the betrayal is not proof of her inadequacy. It is proof of his fragmentation. His choice to cheat was not a reflection of her worth, but of his inability to face his inner world. This shift in perspective can begin to release her from the chains of self-blame. Jung emphasized that every encounter with the shadow, even when it belongs to someone else, is also an invitation for our own growth. For the betrayed woman, this means asking, what did this experience reveal about me? What strength did I discover? What boundaries must I now honor? The hidden shadow behind his infidelity forces her to face her own truth, not because she caused his betrayal, but because she must now choose how to rise from it. The shadow cannot remain hidden forever. For him, it appears through secrecy, lies, and affairs. For her, it appears as pain, emptiness, and lost motivation. But when brought to the light, the shadow loses power. He may never choose to face it, but she can. She can turn the devastation into wisdom, the betrayal into clarity, the wound into transformation. The hidden shadow behind his infidelity is not hers to heal, but by seeing it clearly, she frees herself from carrying its weight. She no longer confuses his darkness with her identity. Instead, she learns to stand in her own light, and from that place, no shadow can define her again, reclaiming strength and motivation. After the fall, after betrayal, it feels as if everything has been stolen. Love, trust, peace, even the desire to keep moving. The woman who once carried lightness now carries heaviness. But as Jung taught, within every collapse lies the seed of renewal. Infidelity may break the surface of her world, but beneath the ruins still lives her essence, waiting to be rediscovered. Reclaiming. Strength begins with one truth. His choices do not define her worth. For too long, she may have looked into his eyes for validation, but betrayal reveals that worth cannot be borrowed. It must come from within. Step by step, she begins to remember who she is. Not just a wife, not just a partner, but a whole human being with her own dreams, her own voice, her own path. Motivation too returns slowly. At first it may feel like a flicker, a small desire to take care of herself again, to set boundaries, to say no to what drains her. Each small act of self-respect is fuel. Each boundary rebuilt is proof that she is no longer defined by the shadow of his choices. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole by embracing one's truth. For her, it means transforming pain into wisdom, emptiness into purpose, and betrayal into a turning point. Reclaiming strength also means facing the unconscious. Instead of burying pain, she allows it to teach her. Instead of fearing loneliness, she discovers that solitude can be a space of healing. Instead of reliving the betrayal, she learns to redirect energy toward creation, writing, art, faith, or new relationships built on honesty. Slowly, the silent weight lifts, replaced by a deeper kind of strength, the strength of a woman who has seen the darkness and still chooses light. This journey is not about revenge. It is not about proving anything to him. It is about reclaiming her life, her energy, and her motivation for herself. She becomes the author of her own story again. The marriage may be broken, but her spirit is unbreakable. The betrayal may have silenced her for a time, but it cannot erase her voice. When she chooses to rise, she rises not as the woman she was before, but as someone even stronger, wiser, freer, and more aware of her own worth. And so, after the fall comes the rising. Betrayal does not have the final word. Healing does, truth does, strength does. Motivation is not gone forever. It is waiting, and it returns when she decides to live for herself again. That is the path Jung would point to. A life no longer chained to another's shadow, but rooted in her own authentic power. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. If this message touched your heart, remember, you are not alone, and your strength is greater than you know. Stay with the channel, because in the next videos, we will continue to uncover the truths of love, the mind, and the soul. Your story is not over. It is just beginning.